Hello everybody, welcome to Staffing at dm-drogerie markt. We like to give you a deep dive of our custom development for staffing. And we like to start with a quick introduction of our speaker. Steffi, why don't you start, please?
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie from projekt0708, or in German you would say projekt0708, so it's a quite German name of the company. There I'm director of HR technology, so responsible for all topics around development like ABAP, WebDynpro, Fiori, or Azure. And in this project, my role was project lead and development. So giving to you, Ralph. You're muted.
Classic. Thanks a lot. My name is Tonn. I'm user experience specialist and founder of Movable Design. We are a P78 partner, and our role in this project was the user experience design part and building prototypes, bringing the user perspective and requirements into the development process, and make sure that we are building the right things in the right way. Please, Christoph, take over from here.
Hey guys, I'm Christoph. I'm HCM in-house consultant at dmTECH, which is the IT service provider for dm-drogerie markt. And in our team, we are responsible for all HR processes within dm. And in this context, I was the project manager for this project. The goal was to digitalize the staffing process in our dm stores.
Cool. We start over from here. And Stephanie, why don't you start with a few words about P78?
Just a few words about P78, so it's easier to name it like P78. We are an IT service and consulting company with our focus on HR. So we offer to attend the whole software and product life cycle in the HR environment. So it's all about SAP, SAP SuccessFactors, SAP Concur, and Microsoft Azure. So we are SAP Gold partner, Microsoft partner, and yeah, of course, a partner of movable design and UX topics. And we are really happy to have such a good team here, but you can make up your own mind in the coming up slides.
Thank you. Christoph, can you share a few words about staffing at DM, where we came from, and how it did look before?
Yes. So what kind of company is dm? We are a German-based retailer, drugstore retailer, with a total of about 3,700 stores in 13 countries. And in these stores, over 60,000 employees do their best to make their shopping experience of our daily 2 million customers the greatest experience in retail, drugstore retail. And you might wonder what this pyramid is. Our founder once said, you have to turn the pyramid upside down because he recognized that the individual store can make the best business decision because they know the conditions best in their store. And that's why he turned this pyramid upside down and he put all the decision making in the store itself. And this philosophy trickles down into the staffing process at dm, which means the employees themselves are responsible for entering their own shifts in the system and not the classical manager assigns shifts to employees. So that's one of the big challenges we had in this project. Switch to the next. Yes, thank you. So before we dive into the nice and shiny Fiori world, what did it look like before? As you can see, we had an old monolithic WebDynpro application that was built over 10 years ago, and that we developed no more features over the last couple of years. And of course, because of that, user acceptance kept going down. And as you can see, also, there was no possible way to make that old app smartphone ready in any way. And finally, in the staffing process, we had lots of printing out. You can see it on the right side of the slide. The people scribbled on the printed paper and they put the handwritten information back into the system. And there was no direct feedback that the user got from the system, although they would have needed it in the system. So yeah, that's how it looked like before. Not good. And now I'm handing over to Ralph, who's going to show you how we approached that challenge.
Thanks, Christoph. Yeah, we started with discovery. After understanding the business goals, we started visiting 10 stores. The target was to understand the actual process, understand what tools they use beside the actual solution, how they trick the system, and get some answers about unclear aspects of the process itself. We wanted to get a sense about what's out there in the reality, get a shared understanding for the whole team. So the folks from the HR department, the IT department, even our developers were included. Because like stores are doing in general all the same. They trade goods, provide services, but at DM, the stores enjoy a great deal of freedom and they can develop their own rules and systems. Like depending on where are they located, on the border, train station, at the countryside, the staffing systems can have a wide variety. There are shift systems out there, one plan for all, or the target solution, or the desired outcome, like a self-planning with employees based on staffing requirements, which are generated out of system data. And the challenge for the solution was to design one application for all requirements for all solutions out there, or even have like a change process in place. Which considered these kind of requirements or realities out there. And what we discovered in the reality was, as Christoph explained before, it is a highly paper-based process which got prepared on the PC. On the printed out document, there were a lot of additional notes and information which got added manually and updated manually. These information or these documents were located in the store back office or in the kitchen. So it's just reachable if you're in the location and be aware that something changed, right? It's not reachable, it's not accessible for everybody anytime. So the store manager need to make sure that the system is running, and this took a high amount of effort and a high amount of communication is needed to hold everybody informed. In extreme cases, the store managers need to spend multiple days to create and update the staffing and balance individual employee wishes with the store requirements. And it took a long time. And based on their planning period, they usually plan 2 or 4 weeks periods. And they need to do it over and over again. So you can imagine how much effort it is to keep the store running and staffed in a good shape. Yeah, and with these real-world impressions and requirements, we went into workshops. The main challenge was to balance all the requirements based on the things we learned out there, to cut the features and functions we be aware of in matter of what kind of functionality are available on the desktop application, what kind of functionalities were available on the mobile application. And please consider mobile were a new thing to the SAP Fiori 2017-2018. And we have the additional complexity that different kind of functions are available or not available based on time and status. Like a function is not available within the future, but in the present and the past it is available on desktop, but not on mobile, etc., etc. So through these workshops, they took a bit of time. We get a shared understanding and create a common picture of the desired outcome we like to provide and develop. And we created some kind of prototypes and wireframes to get this shared understanding and expression. And we have learned pretty quickly that the outcome of our workshops, like the low fidelity wireframes, are good for communication, good for creating a shared understanding and a common picture, but they are a bad starting point for working with developers, because there is a big gap of interpretation, what especially to develop, what kind of logic behind it, etc. So we spent around looping and talking, but we learned really quickly and adapted our approach really quickly, increased the fidelity, like the detail grade, what kind of UI controllers behind and how it's interacting of our wireframes, until we got nearly to the point that we have interactive prototypes. And we used a tool called active prototyping, and SAP already provides presets to it, and it allows us to have a really interactive feeling and an interactive prototype. And with this, we decrease the area of undefined scope drastically, and we streamlined our development process. And by this, we increased our rate of outcome of productive code. But more important, we were able to give these interactive prototypes to our users to test our concepts and assumptions. And we have to do it, for instance, with our mobile application for employees. We tested within real stores, within real users, do real planning with our prototype. We were required to make some manual magic in the background, but the experience for the employee was nearly real, and we have learned a lot of it. But if you want to learn more about our process and prototyping approach, hit us with your question later on or ping us directly. But we now like to jump over to the actual the result, the outcome of our journey, to give you a glimpse how staffing a DM looks like for our employees today. And Steffi, please give us a quick overview how the process looks like today.
Yes. After you've heard what we've done before and how we come to the process, I'm proud to present our final process and the final apps that we developed. So just to give you a rough overview about the process itself, we have 4 main phases. First one is preparation. So there the store manager prepares the planning periods. This is kind of a power user desktop app named Planning Calendar. And he also opens the planning periods for the employee. That happens in second app called Planning Period app. Step 2 is the planning itself. There is where the employee itself plan themselves. Yes, so they open the planning app on their mobile phone and plan their shifts and when they want to work. Third step will be the correction phase. So after the employees plan themselves, the store manager reviews the planning, finalize it, all again in the planning calendar app. And finally, the scheduled working times can be seen by the employees in the store manager in the store working time app. But let's just jump in the first phase with Ralph as our store manager on this side.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in the role as a store manager, and I'm go to my back office desktop to check out or prepare the planning for the next period. Therefore, I go to my desktop PC, opening up the planning calendar application. And what I see here is like the empty planning calendar. In the header, we have some basic information, which store I'm in, because a few store managers are managing multiple stores. I see what kind of sales target I have for the store. We have some general control things like navigating the day and time and have some global actions. And below we display a few day-specific information like the day status, what time of total planned hours are available, is there day comment or day information, and a few display information or display options for the planning calendar below. Within the planning calendar, we see the list of employees which are available at this day within the gray bars. We see the staffing requirements. The gray also, so the top line is the required numbers per half an hour, and the row below is the covered. It's pretty empty right now, and therefore we show it red, so that there needs to be hours planned so these requirements get fulfilled. These are a key feature within this application. These numbers are calculated based on logistic planning, sales forecasts, and additional requirements by the store itself. To start the preparation, I can add some day-specific information or day infos. For instance, DM is currently running some COVID-19 rapid test centers and a few days a week. So on these specific days, I can easily add a hint for the day so everybody is aware, hey, there is a COVID-19 rapid test centers available. By clicking into the calendar itself, I can create or add time entries for employees which are not planning themselves within the preparation phase. For instance, like upfront agreed activities or schedules I can create already so that the employees don't need to have prepared themselves, and I can easily pick the type like a business trip or the attendance in the COVID-19 test centers. And I can easily click create or create new, so I can have multiple attendances or time entries created pretty quickly. As a final step, I check recurring attendances. These are attendances like school visits, employees who work as a cashier only on specific dates, or any kind of recurring activities I need to do over and over again. I can use the function Serienanwesenheit to add these predefined patterns, which then will get automatically generated within the process, so I don't need to do them by myself. Now I can use the global action to jump over to the planning period application. The planning period application is actually a mobile application which can be used on the desktop too. It is to define and release the planning period so the employees can plan themselves. So I can set here the period of planning, for instance, the full month of June, and I can set the deadline to the 20th of May. Additionally, I have the automation options to generate these time entries based on the recurring attendance patterns we saw before, and I can update the staffing requirement based on the data or based on the latest system data. By clicking on releasing it, the planning is in the hand of the employees now. My task as store manager is done. And Stefanie, now please take over and give us a run through the employee experience with their mobile application, please.
Yes, so the planning period is opened, and I, as an employee, can now see the active planning period in the employee planning app, which is a mobile app. Which you can see on top is the active planning period, where I can see how long can I plan myself. So I can plan my shifts for June, and I have to finish it on the 15th, so it's long ago, so a bad example, but normally it should be in the future. And in the main part of the app is the planning calendar itself, so I can see in different colors which is going on in that time. So the blue ones tell me this is the active planning period. The gray shaded ones are non-working days like holidays or Sundays. The green tells me that I have some holidays in June from the 14th to the 19th. And the emphasized days already have events inside. Like you can see, there's the 1st of June chosen, and on the bottom I can see there's a travel plan for me. This was Ralph as a store manager who planned a business trip for me on the 1st of June. And there's also some further information about the stuffing. But now I can start to plan my attendance for the 2nd of June, because on the 1st I'm already traveling. So what I can see when I jump into the day is, first of all, on top the requirements for the day. Red, where are some people missing, and green, where some people already planned themselves. So I can get a short hint where I maybe have to plan myself, where are some people missing, where I'm going. Also, I have some additional information all about the details, like who is there for the moment, or additional information, like I can see that we have the COVID test center active on the 2nd of June. And maybe, Ralf, you can switch to the next page, where we can just give you a short view how does it look like, how I can see additional information about the attendancy. So I can see the people or the colleagues which are already planned, and I can also see their qualifications. Like for every shift or every time slot, there have to be a person who has the first aid qualification. So I can check how is it going. Is my lovely colleague working at the same time? Do I want to work at the same time? So coming back to the first screen, I see on the top that in the staffing graphic or in the requirement graphic that there is somebody missing from 8 o'clock in the morning. So I put in my time. I have the chance to put in an additional break which is not in the standard, and I have the chance to put in a comment to my store manager, for example, that I really want to work at that time because at the afternoon I have a private appointment which I have to attend. So I click on Save and New and already start planning the next one. Yeah, you jumped over it. So what I saw is in the day info, there is the COVID test center day. So I thought maybe I will work in the morning just normally in the store, and in the afternoon I want to work in the COVID test center station. So I save new and go in, and what I can see on top already that the requirement graphic is actualized now, it's updated. So at 8 o'clock, everything's green. So there is nobody needed anymore for the shift starting at 8 o'clock. But I will add myself another attendancy for the COVID test center. Yes. So again, I can put some time in and then add some additional information. And so I go on with that kind of planning for every day in the active planning period. So for the whole June, I plan myself. You can see that the calendar now is full, so I choose some free days on the 8th and the 9th of June. I put in some other working hours and do it for the whole planning period before we send it back to Ralf, the store manager.
Thank you, Stephanie. After all employees complete their planning, my task is to check the planning input for the whole planning period. So I see the time entries and how they fit into the planning requirements. In this case, everything is fine, everything is green. Because a full period or a full month with multiple employees is a whole lot of data, we introduced the planning quick check to make scanning for issues way more quickly compared to go through every day just manually. By opening up the quick check, I get a checklist of all issues for all days within the planning period. I see, for instance, under or over fulfillment of the requirements, time entries planned outside these requirements, missing qualification, or even law violations. As I've explained before, every store has their own kind of logics, rules, and systems in place. Therefore, we added the possibility to adjust their thresholds or activate or deactivate some kind of checks based on their store requirements, so that we provide only the real relevant results of the checklist to the user within the store. By clicking the check results within this list, like this law violation, it navigates me to the specific date. Within the specific date, I can check for the context, make the correction at the time entry, which is marked as red. And within this message pop over on the left-hand side, I get the context right away, which is telling me that an underage employee planned for more than 8 hours, which shouldn't happen. So I can now easily adjust the time entry by clicking it. And I adjust the starting time from 10 to 12 and save it. And we are all set and done for the day. This process I will go through until the checklist is empty and I'm satisfied. Then I jump over to the planning period application within the header, quick link again. And to finalize planning of June, or in case of bigger issues, I can give it back to the employees for self-correction. But in our case, everything is just fine. and I can confirm that the planning period of June is done and final. And by this, the final times get published to the application store working times, which shows me the staffing for the day for my store. And that wraps it up, and I will jump over to some lessons learned we have made through the process.
Okay, thanks, Ralph. Of course, after such a project, you have some lessons learned that we want to share. First, you have to convert employees to partners. That means you have to deeply integrate them in the designing phase of your app, and you can later build on those users for better features, newer features for feedbacks concerning your apps. As Ralph showed already, you have to prototype rapid and often because you have to make sure your ideas work before you start implementing them. And also you have to sometimes think outside the box because there are many ways to build prototypes that feel real for the tested user. And thirdly, users are going to show you. We discovered some cool features that we implemented by just observing the user, and they are showing us ways in their daily work how they were, like, for example, checking their planning with a list, and that what generates the feature, the checking the planning that Ralph showed. So that was pretty cool. And at the end, as you can see, there's always a lot of people involved. It's always a team effort, and you have to get everybody on board in order to get to the goal that you want to achieve. So that's our lessons learned. And now we're super excited for Kai's feedback.
Thanks a lot. I think I'm really impressed by what the team did. UX is a team effort, and this was really a great team effort, a wonderful application with incredible depth of functionality. Still, it looks very simple, and it was really hard to come up with anything that would improve that. In some cases, it's just iterations that I later learned the team had also done during the design process, so going into the same direction. In other places, it's a bit cleaning up things also. So I think, threshold level is pretty high. So let me move forward. Okay, let's look at what we've seen, starting with the staff planning. I think what is obvious here, first of all, it's already some time back that we used this design. So we already moved to a new visual design language with Quartz. This is still Belize. And with the move to the new visual design, we also cleaned up some of the things, especially in the shell bar. So for instance, the me area on the left has now been moved into the user menu on the right, which in the end helps to align it with a lot of other applications that are out there in the field. Another thing that becomes very obvious here is that the amount of information that is available in the header area can become a bit overwhelming. So I think it's still very good, but we could move things a bit around and I think clean up things a bit more so that it's easier to understand what is what, especially here, the date navigation in the center. This is, of course, one important aspect of the whole application, but for me, this right now seems to be a bit too far away from the actual calendar. Also, the toolbar, we have now with the new visual design the possibility to show the buttons a bit more clearly. Here they get a bit lost in the amount of information, and of course also this additional information that is below here. So overall, what I would try to do is to clean that up and put things that belong together more closely together. Here we see two examples how that could look like. On the top, I used the dynamic page layout, and I put basically all information about the store up here into the title area. So it's clear I'm in the store. This is the money the store usually makes. And these are the actions in the header toolbar where they should be. Then in the content area, I was thinking to basically make this planning cycle a bit more tangible and a bit more obvious. So one option, just to show this as a string, but here I was also thinking about being able to switch between the different planning options, planning cycles, so that you see this is the planning cycle from this date to that date. This is the current status, and this is the due date when people should hand in their information. So everything that is about organizing goes here. And here, this is basically the concrete day in this case, so the date navigation. Here, of course, there are many different ways how this date navigation has been implemented, and we've seen a lot of iterations also in the calendar apps that we're using day in, day out. I think in the end, a pattern that has established itself over time is that you have the back and forward navigation as arrows left and right, and in the center usually the today. What we see in the current design is that this today is a bit hidden below the date entry, so it's difficult to relate, and actually also not very obvious that this is even actionable. So putting that in the center, making it clearly actionable, we have a way to navigate step by step through the dates and weeks. And here we have the possibility to fetch or pick a date. So two alternative ways of navigating time possible here. Some of the other information available here. Also, what could be very handy is to switch to a full screen mode, so that you can have once you located the right date and so on, that you can expand it and have all the rest of the screen covered. One thing that I was a bit concerned about is what we see here is the filter. We see here three attributes, three filters set, and I don't know which those are. This could be pretty important if I plan the day and I have three important resources filtered out or whatever, and I don't really see it. I just see the three. Therefore, I think for such a planning application, it might be useful to have the filter more visible. We have the info bar for that purpose, which sits on top of this table or planning calendar control, which shows what this is being filtered about and allows you to reset the filter if you need it. In addition, we had this day info. So you could have some information about that day. There was this example of the COVID test center, or it's just a special offers day, whatever. So people are aware of it. And also here, it would probably be good to make that more present on the screen, so be able to show the whole text here instead of putting it into a popover and making it hard to access overall. Also, of course, some making use of the primary actions like the checking the planning and so on could be possible here. So things like that. Next step, looking more into the planning calendar area. Of course, what we see here is a bit of an artifact of switching off one part of the control. I think that's the reason why we have the hour selection a bit floating in the middle of everything. Usually you would have the inbuilt date navigation up here. There was some problems while during the implementation stage where this date navigation was not possible to be used. That's why the team put up the date navigation up here. Of course, I think meanwhile this issue is being resolved, so it could be used again and the alignment could become fixed here. Another aspect is the top two lines are used for like the overall requirement and the fulfillment of that requirement. Here, a grayish background was introduced, which becomes lighter or darker gray here. Here, I see at least one issue potentially, which is the color contrast between the text and the background. With the black on dark gray, you might become inaccessible, which is of course something that we want to avoid. Therefore, it might be helpful. So first of all, here you see how the standard navigation would look like. And second, it might be helpful to instead use the regular planning strips that are available to represent that, and maybe highlight the lines that are for the overall check lines for the planning with a special avatar or something like that, so that they are set apart instead of overriding the color of the lines, which can usually lead to such issues. And when we use the standard controls, this has been taken care of by the theme automatically, and you cannot run into such issues. Also advertising some additional stuff here, like using the avatars. Of course, if you have pictures of the employees, using that there makes things always very nice. But of course, maintenance is difficult here. And we also have icons for those entries, which is also giving a bit more visual feedback to the user. Then we have this the check of the planning. I have to speed up a bit. Here, what I think it's really cool to have this support, because of course such a plan for a whole planning cycle can become very complex, and to have the issues highlighted is of course very cool. And also the way how this is designed is very consistent with the message center on the left. So also here, attention to consistency, which is always very important. The only thing I'm concerned about is that you have a lot of interaction opening and closing this thing, because of course, if I select an issue here and I navigate to that issue, this thing disappears. I have to call it up again, find the next issue, and so on. So there's a lot of back and forth and reorientation and opening and closing and so on, which I think could become a bit difficult over time, especially if you have many issues here. An idea would be to make that check area a more permanent part of the screen. We have the dynamic site content for that, which can sit next to the planning calendar. So you could show that if you click on check planning, this thing could open up. You would see that list of the issues, and when selecting those issues, the planning calendar navigates to the corresponding time, and maybe would even be able to show the issues in a popover or something. And you would have a permanent access to the issues on the left side, and you could even relay things and so on, which I think would be a bit more easy and a bit less back and forth navigation. In the end, just the same thing, just a different container. If you click on that check planning, you would get this check. You can close this again and do another iteration, check planning, and so on. If there are no issues, then you would be able to finalize the planning. The footer toolbar, the finalizing action with close the planning would be available, and you can finalize that then. One thing that I was a bit struggling with was the separation between the planning application and the application that controls the process flow, more or less. So here you set up all the data for the planning cycle. So you create a new planning cycle, you define whether certain things should happen when you create that planning cycle, and so on. So you control and move the whole thing, the whole process forward in a separate application. In the discussion that we had before the presentation, I learned that there were some reasons for that, as this application was also expected to become bigger and so on. But just based on the current status, I was just wondering whether we could integrate this whole thing into the planning application as such. So the idea was, as I already explained earlier, maybe to have like a drop down here for the planning cycles that would list these planning cycles, at least those that are in the near surroundings. So for instance, the last one that is already closed, the current one based on which we're currently working, because maybe even while going, there might be a need to adjust those planning cycles. And of course, the one that I'm planning for and any upcoming that I'm already working on. So this would be a nice way to have this all at hand and somehow integrated, and the user could then switch between the different things, even compare. Maybe you could create a new planning cycle. You could start working on the current planning cycle, so switch between the different states. And of course, if necessary and possible, maybe even delete a planning cycle that has not been communicated yet. This could also be done not with a drop down, but a bit more intentional, a bit more separated by having such a value help kind of button and a list. And here you see also how the different status could be highlighted more by just using the object status control. This one is it's actually very nice because it brings color and combines color and text and allows to emphasize such a status very strongly. There are issues in reading inverted text, so negative text like we see it here. So white text on a colored background is not easy to scan if you have many items. So therefore, if you have it in a table, it actually looks nice, but it's not as easy to scan as the other way around. But to use the color in combination with text to convey something like a status in this context, it might be very instrumental actually. This is could be like the dialogue how you create the planning cycle. So instead of being required to pick the individual dates, this could be also mapped to calendars. So whenever you work on time ranges and so on, of course, having the calendar, seeing what is the Monday, what is the Friday, how many weekends do I have in between is always good. And also to put that into relationship to the submission due date and so on. So therefore I was thinking whether we could use the calendar in this context so that people could select in here or set the dates or have both reflected to each other. And of course, also having the settings that we saw there. So by creating a new planning cycle, we would see the same thing as in the other, but more integrated into this application and with a bit more visual support. Now coming to the mobile application, which again is really cool and really nice, and all the attention to detail with regards to reflecting the different status in the calendar, which is much more than I have on this screenshot, which was, I picked the wrong one for some reason. Is really nice. Looking at it from a standard development point of view, of course, this is not using a standard floor plan, not a page layout with like a header and so on, which I would recommend in this case. We have a new control, which is called illustrated messages, which is still in kind of beta. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but this will bring also the possibility to include standard illustrations. For instance, for such empty spaces, you could have such an illustration, and it would even offer you a trigger to create the first entry. And there are different images, and they will be maintained by us. So with new themes and new styles and whatever, this would be updated. I was struggling a bit with this list. I think I think it's like this very bold line in between the date, the time, and the description is a bit. I think it's a bit kind of putting the two, separating the two for some reason. I don't know why. I would have expected this line in the beginning, but nevertheless. And I was thinking about how this, actually this is now the details view. What is really cool and I really like so much is the usage of this calendar, which makes the whole thing very visual. People see directly what is the state of the day. What is unfortunate, I think, and I know the team has thought about how this could be done, is that you cannot directly select the time range in the calendar. That's unfortunate, so you have to pick the dates, the times here. It would be great to combine the two. And also, of course, the presence, the availability of the other people that have already chosen to work on that day is on a separate tab, so you cannot really see everything at the same time. And I was wondering whether this would be possible in some way or the other as well. Not talking about the toolbar down here, of course, this is completely inverted to our standard. We have decided to go with the positive action on the left and the negative action on the right. This is due to accessibility reasons. We want to use the same order, of course, on desktop and mobile, and especially on desktop. Of course, if you use the keyboard to tap to the controls, in this order would first bring the user to the abortion or to the cancel action, and only at the end to the positive action, which is probably not so great because you want to do the positive action usually. I was also thinking about avoiding save and save new, because somehow, to be honest, I always I get some synapses breaking down when I have to read something like that. I always feel like I'm doing the wrong thing there. So I would just try to by default, save things without big action and only leave that screen when you're done. So save some of the options for the user here. So how would that look like? As an alternative, using a standard layout as we have it in our standard. So this is the title with the date, due date, then the calendar. We already saw from the implementation how that could look like. This is nothing big difference. I would list the items here and potentially group them by day, so that you have really more like the grouping. You have all the items in the day, and you can scroll down the whole list. And if you maybe select even in the calendar, you could narrow that down to certain dates or time ranges. Where to put the new action? Is it in the footer toolbar or on top of the list? Frankly, both have their advantages and disadvantages. Putting a new action into the footer toolbar actually is not following our standard, because it's absolutely not a finalizing action. But on the other hand, of course, on mobile, such action should be close to the thumb. Is that one as close to the thumb as it should be? Possibly not, because that's already reaching like the dead end of how far you can bend your thumb. So actually, it might be quite okay to have it up here as well. Needs some usability testing for sure.
And we need to keep the time in the corner of our eye. Allow for a couple of minutes.
Yes, I know. Sorry. So again, walking fast through that, I was looking at options how we could combine the direct entry of the time ranges. I created this huge wall of buttons, which is really awkward, but it works similar to the calendar, so maybe it works even. One thing important, you don't have to show all the fields of a form all the time. If there are things that are rarely used, you can also hide them behind a more, show less section, which would then allow you to show also the availability of the other colleagues on the same screen, which would be exactly what I was looking for in the previous screen. Alternatively, for selecting this wall of buttons, you could also use the chart and combine it with the range selection. The range selection works on mobile. It also offers the alternative possibility to enter dates at times via keyboard. These are input fields, and you could move back and forth and see directly the reflection of your entry there. That could solve the issue. I don't know how well it works really, would be also something for usability testing, but maybe that could solve the issue that we've seen in the implementation right now. This one is not so exciting. It's just about editing the items. I was just thinking about to make that more similar to calendar entries, and here also like the individual entries and the repeating entries. Well, nothing important here. And with that, I'm done. Thank you a lot.